You're listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio, featuring the Interactive Interview, courtesy of WrestlingEpicenter.com.
Welcome back to the Interactive Interview. We're joined here with one of the people that has a special place in my heart from my childhood, Bil Apter. Bill, how you doing?
I'm glad you said from your childhood, because if I have a very special place in your heart right now, if we're both guys, I would have worried about you.
Come on.
Fine, and thank you, so I'm honored to be on the Interactive Interview.
Well, it's great to have you on, and we've wanted to have you on for over a year now, so I'm glad that we actually have an occasion to speak with you. This coming weekend, you're a part of the Wrestle Reunion. What would you like to tell us about this, and what are you expecting from this event?
Well, what I want to tell you about it is Diamond Dallas Page and I are hosting this event that's going to be the Wrestlemania, the Super Bowl of wrestling conventions.
Mm-hmm.
The promoters, Rob Rustin and Sal Calente, have gone out of their way to book over 80 of the greatest legends in professional wrestling. And what do I expect out of it? I expect that it's just going to be an event that people are always going to remember and always talk about it. When you talk history in wrestling, when people talk to me and say, "Hey, Bill, I remember you when I was a kid with the magazines like you did," I'd like years from now people to say, "Boy, I was there when history was made." So it's going to be, as you know, at the Doubletree Hotel by the airport in Tampa on the 28th, 29th, and 30th, and there's such a great array of talent: Dusty Rhodes, the Rock and Roll Express, Kamala, Sherry Martel, Rowdy Piper, who I'm going to do an Apters alley with. I'm going to go one-on-one with the Rowdy one.
Yeah, we've been trying to get Mr. Piper on for about a month now. He always agrees to come on, but something always comes up, but we're going to get him. We just got off the phone with Terry Funk, who's also going to be there. What a treat that was to speak with Mr. Funk.
Wait a minute. How do you know you were talking to the real Terry Funk? See, I might be the real Terry Funk, and you think you're talking to Bil Apter.
Well, Terry's a legend. Terry's one of my dearest friends in the business. It was Terry and Dory who convinced Baba the Giant 22 years ago to bring me over to Japan. They were booking in Japan at that point, and they brought me over on a tour. It was my first trip to Japan, thanks to Dory and Terry.
Absolutely.
I've been reading PWI since about as long as I've been a wrestling fan, and when I first started reading it, you were there. When did you decide to become a part of this business?
Probably when I was about 9 or 10 years old. I was a wrestling fan for as long as I can remember, and my brother used to prop me up on the bed and tell me to move left, right, then he'd say, "Wait, hold it," and then he'd drop kick me off the bed. "What is that?" And he said, "Well, come on, watch this stuff." And I started watching wrestling. And then when I was in junior high school in Queens, New York, I started putting out a little wrestling newsletter just called Wrestling Stars. And that was actually the first time, so it was in my teenage years.
What advice would you give to somebody like me who has just signed a deal that I'm going to actually be editing Ricky Steamboat's book, and I really would like to be, and without sucking up, I'd like to follow much the same footsteps that you've had. What advice would you have for me?
Would you stop sucking up, please? No.
You'd be the first one to say that to me.
No,
how would you suggest someone like me to continue on with the getting in magazines and such?
It's difficult right now because the wrestling magazine business is not what it used to be. It used to be you'd have 10 or 12 wrestling magazines out there on the newsstand. Now there's maybe 3 or 4. So it's like I always will compare it to the old days of show business when there used to be all these great places for entertainers to go and get out and ply their trade and sing and dance and do stuff. But all those little theater type of things closed up. Same thing with the magazines. Most of them have closed up, and there's no market for people to ply their trade anymore.
Do you think the internet had something to do with that?
Absolutely, no question in my mind. Stanley Weston, who was the man who started me, we lost him several years ago, he was my mentor. He always said there's nothing like the feel of holding a magazine in your hands, collecting it and treasuring it, and that's true. But that was my generation. The generation today doesn't collect magazines like we used to. They want immediate information, and once the internet started coming in, people knew, well, I don't have to wait a month and a half to find out what happened in Puerto Rico now in a wrestling magazine. I can go and look and probably find it 10 minutes after the show. So, yeah, it definitely did hurt.
Well, I would have to agree with you on the. I do like holding the magazine in my hands, and I like looking through. I was always bigger on the Mark magazines because they kind of feel like to me like a side to the storylines that are going on. Can you give us maybe some thoughts or memories of you had working with PWI?
But I have nothing but good memories working at PWI. I worked with great groups of people throughout the 28 years that I was there, and have no regrets. I left when I was given a great offer by WOW magazine. PWI was no longer under the same ownership. My loyalty was to Stanley Weston. Had WOW come along and offered me a job and tried to woo me away from Stanley Weston, I probably wouldn't have gone. But my feeling at that point was that this was a great offer. The wrestling business was changing. I had seen the first issue of WOW, and it blew me away.
Do you have any regrets about leaving?
No.
No?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. You make your moves in your life rather, and sometimes it's the right move, sometimes it's the wrong move. It was the right move. It was time for me to. The business was changing, and I needed to change with it.
I remember distinctively reading your header into the WOW magazine that was covering the 2000 King of the Ring. And this isn't really so much a question, just something that I have always admired you for. Although a lot of people think that you're a little old school, you've always remained positive to the newer school, and I really feel that was evident in when you were covering the 2000 King of the Ring. I just thought it was a really well-written header into that. So,
well, thank you. I appreciate that. No matter how I've been bashed about from year to year or whatever, I've always enjoyed it. I always like getting up the next day and finding something new about the business. And no matter how the business changed, I mean, when McMahon came out and said, we're all entertainment, wow, that's it. You know, what do I tell people now? I always told people wrestling was on the up and up because that was the way it worked. But now it changed. You know, it's altogether different. So you either change with it, and you can either hate it or love it. I still love the business, and I still love it today.
One of the changes that Vince came on and said was that they're not he said this pretty much 2 years after he said the opposite. He said that they're no longer built for children, and they're now going to go in a new direction and all that stuff. What was your thought on the Attitude Era and the adult direction?
I love the Attitude parts of the Attitude Era. I thought DX was great. I loved it. Precursor to NWO. I loved it. Absolutely loved it. They were trying for a new audience because the other audience they had wasn't staying with them. They started losing some money. They were floundering around with people like, and these are great workers, so don't take this in the wrong context, but the days of like Savio Vega and all those people. So they had to find a new direction, and the adult way was the way to go. The shock value. I think one day somebody watched Jerry Springer and said we need to do this.
So are you one of the people with the train of thought of hating Vince Russo, or what is your impression of Vince Russo?
Oh, I don't hate Vince Russo. I don't hate anybody in the business. Everybody has a different direction.
Right.
They want to go. Every creative person tries. They're given a job by the company to turn the business around. So they try their own methods. Not everybody's going to like what you do all the time. I learned that a long time ago. I could write something that I think is terrific, or take a picture I think is terrific, and not everybody's going to like it. And I have to accept that. Vince Russo had his own ideas, his own mind. He was hired by the company to do it. Some people liked it. Some people hated it.
I was personally a fan, and I think James was too, of a lot of Vince Russo's storylines that revolved more around wrestling than the sex-oriented stuff. But in 1999, he started more or less hot-shotting and giving away a lot of matches that were pay-per-view quality for free on TV to compete with Nitro. And James and I feel that that might be where a lot of the down cycle started, giving away such big matches for free. Do you have an opinion on this?
Yeah, my opinion on that is that company was trying to survive. To do that, to battle someone, you have to give your best stuff away. At that point, the pay-per-view was important, but it was also important for the sake of their sponsorships and everything else to keep the TV ratings up. If your ratings are low, it's going to be harder to get sponsors.
Yeah. Well, nowadays that they don't have any competition, I'm going to go ahead and, since we're pretty relaxed with this one, I'm just going to shoot with you and say something that we mentioned on the last recap with Coco. We had Coco Beware on, and after the show we were doing a recap, and Eric and I were talking about the old school Royal Rumbles where, for example, Randy Savage, Jake Roberts were feuding, and you just wanted to see those two get it on in the Rumble, so you were hoping, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, will it be Savage to come out and face Jake? Now this year they have a feud going on with Edge and Shawn Michaels. Instead of just making people want to see that, that confrontation in the Rumble match, since they're both in it, they actually have a match before a one-on-one match. Do you think that things like that are just, are they booking too quickly?
I think right now they're booking to see what people are going to like and what's going to stick. I think it's a formula right now where let's throw things against the wall and see what sticks, see what people like. They're trying things. I'm going to back up a little. I'll tell you what's wrong with the wrestling business, in my opinion.
Okay. Sure.
It's not just the booking. It's not just the writing, etc. What's wrong with the wrestling business right now is what I've called in columns the focal factor, rather. The focal factor meaning that there's no focal point star in professional wrestling anymore. It used to be a case where wrestling was Hulk Hogan. Wrestling was the Ultimate Warrior. Wrestling was Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, Bruno Sammartino, Pedro Morales. You can go superstar Billy Graham, Dusty Rhodes, all of these people. When you stop somebody in the street now and you mention pro wrestling, a lot of times you're going to get, is Hulk Hogan still alive?
Oh, wow.
What is, is Ric Flair still around? You will not, I would say 8 out of 10 people, casual people on the street, now will not say, wrestling, hey, Triple H, Chris Benoit, Randy Orton. It's not going to happen.
Right.
So what they need is that one identification person, that one guy. It was The Rock.
And now he's gone.
It was Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Yep.
And he's back, but
sort of.
It's not the Stone Cold Steve Austin that people wanted to pay to see.
Yeah, obviously not.
Well, can I go, James? Or you
sure,
want?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Would you guys stop arguing, please?
I love looking at the wrestling business. I love studying the history of it and everything. And while we're on the subject of up cycles and down cycles, I've pretty much looked at a lot of I'm under the thought that I think bad booking comes into play, but I think all in all the wrestling business is cyclical. I think, granted, decisions are going to come into play, but I mean if you look at it, it was 85 to 89 and 97 to 2001, so it's like 4-year periods. And to get to that point, like you said, they needed that big star. In the 80s, it was Hulk Hogan was given he reached out to the mainstream through Mr. T.
Right.
In the 90s, it was Steve Austin reaching out through Mike Tyson originally. Do you think, James and I were talking about possibly, or we both think a character such as, say, John Cena can probably go connect with America's youth today, and possibly maybe sometime down the road getting him involved with some sort of big name rapper that could push.
I think he's been there too long already to be that guy. That guy. When that guy comes in, it's that guy right away.
Yeah.
And and the guy, it doesn't go up and down and up and down. When Hogan came in,
you knew it.
Bang.
Yeah,
bang.
Goldberg, for example, too, as well.
Goldberg came in, not to WWE.
Right.
Bang.
Yeah.
Brock Lesnar came really close.
Yeah.
I think if
look.
he had a look. The only thing is, I think if he really wanted it, he would have made it. I know a lot of people disagree. I just don't think he ever was as devoted to the business as
There were two trains. There's two trains of thought here.
Mm-hmm.
You have to want it, and you also have to be given the right vehicle to do it with. I think they made him champion because of public pressure. They made him champion very quickly. But where do you go from there? They didn't have enough guys to feed him that meant anything.
Yes, that's what we say all the time.
Right.
They don't have a big enough lower card, and the roster's too small.
Exactly.
And
to me, put the brand extension was a huge error because McMahon wanted a war with himself. He wanted SmackDown to be WCW, Raw to be WWF back then. It didn't work.
Right.
It didn't work. And now, to me, the SmackDown brand it's almost bland.
Oh, absolutely. We call it barren. We call it
And yet their ratings are really good.
Which is surprising.
Not too bad, actually. Yeah.
No. We call it a barren wasteland. So.
But I actually have a question for you, Bill, about the brand split. Do you think obviously, I think money was obviously a big factor with Vince for splitting up the brands, but also I've noticed a problem in wrestling federations when they have during their peaks when they have too many main eventers. And me and James and I talked about this on the last show. When WCW was at the top, there was Goldberg, there was Hogan, there was DDP, Flair, Sting, Luger, Savage, the list goes on. And eventually people get pushed down the card. You didn't have enough room for them. And in WWE, you had like Angle, Nash, Triple H, Hogan, Michaels, Rock.
This is 2002,
Austin,
I guess.
It goes on and on. Do you think a big reason for the brand split was to get? I mean, now both brands have four main eventers. Like on one side you have Orton, Triple H, Benoit, and Michaels, and on the other side JBL, Eddie, Undertaker, and Angle. I mean, do you think that was a motivation behind the brand split?
I think a motivation for it. And again, I look at things as if I'm sitting in the office of the WWE, and I'm saying these road trips are killing these guys. And also, I want to be in more parts of the country. At the same time, I want to have a crew in California, and that same night I want a crew in New York. So how do you double your revenue? You split the crews up. You make two crews, so now you have what we want to be a successful touring company going on the West Coast and one on the East Coast the same night. That's the main idea in the mind of somebody running a business that way is we can't send, the Raw guys all over every week. It's too much. This group of guys. So let's split everything up, and some guys go here and some guys go here. So now we're running two shows.
In the 80s, didn't they do that? They had two different crews doing.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. But it was all under one banner.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's all under WWF at that point.
Well, let me ask you this question then. And I know.
WWF.
Yeah. When we go back to that time, and now that we're talking about the brand extension, many on the internet are saying, well, yes, it was a mistake, and I don't think many people would disagree with that. But are we too far into it now to just suddenly do away with it?
No. I think that the bottom line in any business, in any company, if they start losing a lot of money, they have to reassess what they're doing. Now, if you notice, coming up in Hawaii, and I think a few other places, they're going to be doing super shows that bring these stars of Raw and SmackDown together. So they're trying it. It means that things aren't working the way that they think they should be working, so they're trying a little new formula.
Very interesting.
Well, when James obviously mentioned the 80s, and back in the 80s, for the most part, there was there was Survivor Series and there was WrestleMania up until the end, and they brought in SummerSlam. A big thing that I think a lot of people agree on is that there are way too many pay-per-views. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, pay-per-view's not as special as it used to be. It's sometimes the Monday night show after the pay-per-view, a lot of times, is better than the actual pay-per-view.
Yeah.
Yeah, that certainly was.
Too many pay-per-views? Yeah. I think so. It's lost the aura of real importance to me.
And the thing about that made the pay-per-view special, and we discussed this, kind of touched on it earlier, was that every Raw is a pay-per-view quality Raw. Way back when, WWF TV, you had 90% squash matches.
Right, of course. You'd have a main guy,
right,
beat up a little guy, and then maybe his opponent for the pay-per-view would come and, you know, do an attack on him and have a pull-apart or something like that. That's a lost art.
Yeah. Well, James and I both, we think, although a lot of people on the internet really trash the idea of squash matches, we think they're really necessary to building characters. And I mean, I would really like to see a lot more squash matches, because if you look at a guy, I don't know how you feel on this, but like Heidenreich, I mean, he came in and feuded with The Undertaker, but before that, the only guys they had him beat was like Michael Cole and Josh Matthews. So he didn't beat anybody to seem intimidating.
Back in the 70s and 80s, if you had a guy the size of Heidenreich,
right,
he would be built up to be a monster, an absolute monster for months before he'd get a title shot. And then there would be the excitement to see that match would be incredible.
Yeah.
Vince McMahon Sr. would have taken a guy like this and made him like the biggest monster in the world.
Yeah.
And we just touched on it really at the beginning of the interview, basically saying that we feel that the roster needs to be bigger, so there are lower card guys and mid card guys and upper card
but
guys.
Then you're going to have a portion of the public that's going to say, well, why should I watch Raw on Monday night or SmackDown? It's all squash matches. You're going to have that element as well.
We think, like, you know, not like all squash matches, but like, you know, not every match should be like maybe a pay-per-view quality match.
Exactly, which they are now, because Raw, it's pay-per-view quality.
Now, when
Giving it away, the secret in the wrestling business in the 70s, when there was no cable and everything like that, in the early 70s, was on TV. Never give away that main event. You had to go to the Garden in New York or wherever you live to see that match. And they would draw capacity crowds for Pedro Morales would wrestle a guy in 3 different kind of matches 3 months in a row and sell that place out. So did Bruno. Superstar Billy Graham. It was always like that because there was that they didn't give matches away on TV.
Absolutely, and we touched on it a lot earlier. And just thinking, you know, when you go back to the ratings of the 80s and such, I mean, they weren't that bad, the ratings, and the pay-per-views really were special. I mean, and we touched on that a lot. Anyway,
it's a different wrestling business now. No matter, you know, we were talking about how the internet has affected magazines. Cable TV is so powerful now, it's affected the whole wrestling business.
Do you think people's attention spans are shorter?
Absolutely. Sure. I absolutely hate, and I always wrote about this. I used to be able to watch a match like Jack Briscoe against Dory Funk Jr. for an hour, and you'd never hear a chant of boring.
Right.
Now, after 6 minutes or 4 minutes, the guy gets somebody in an arm lock. Boring.
Yeah. Everything's got to be a high spot.
Yep.
Yep.
I think a big problem with...
Speaking about, you just mentioned High Spot.
Yep.
Speaking about High Spot, there's a shoot interview with me on highspots.com.
I saw it on there,
People
yes.
can go to highspots.com. See, you had to say High Spot, so it reminded me of this thing. And
Yes.
There's a 2-hour shoot interview that highspots.com is selling, and there's some stuff in there I've never talked about me being on WWE payroll for a period of time, and very interesting inside stuff about the magazine business.
Would you ever write a book?
I haven't offered to do one. I have to find the time to do it. And if I do it, it's going to be a fun book. It's not going to be any deep exposés or anything like that. I've had a fun career, and I want to tell people about the fun that I had.
In one of the WOW magazines, you wrote about that kind of smart fan, the one that nobody likes to sit next to at wrestling matches. I was at a Raw show with my family in June, and I had 3 of those next to me, who the entire time, obviously...
My children were there?
The entire time, when someone would get an arrest hold, they would go, slow it down, and I was like, and you know, I'm a big guy, I'm like 6'4", so I turned to the midway and was like, hey, why don't you just cut it out for a little bit? And you know, they shut up. But the thing was, though, I mean, it just seems like people have this, a lot of those fans have an inferiority complex that they need to say, oh, I know about the inside of the business, instead of getting lost in the match, you know?
Can you see if people did this in the movies?
Yeah, I always use that example.
Can you see that with somebody about 5 minutes into the movie, people are into it, and all of a sudden there's a slow scene, somebody starts yelling out, boring.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the same thing.
They get pelted with popcorn.
You're supposed to get lost
Yeah.
in the moment and have a good time and forget it. Why be so critical? Enjoy what you're seeing.
Well, I mean, take a look at just recent shows in Raw from Toronto. Look at the crowd. None of the crowd appreciated it.
If you read me on OneWrestling.com, you will see that I'm still not overly critical on anything, because I watch wrestling not to be that smart-ass critic.
Yeah.
If I see something I don't like, I'll say I don't like it, and I'll say why. But, people on the Internet, most of the people that I read and have read on the Internet, go out of their way just to find things wrong and knock it.
Absolutely.
Then why watch it?
I think that's exactly what I said the last show. If you don't like it, don't watch it.
Yeah,
It's
on the channel.
Yeah, we really try to be positive here and try to, constructive criticism.
And there's no reason to be negative. You have two different brands to choose from. If you don't like one, watch the other. You have TNA to choose from, which I will talk about in just a second. You have now 24/7, the channel. So, I mean, if you don't like that version of wrestling, watch the old stuff. Just watch it, but stop complaining.
It's there.
Right.
Yeah. People didn't have this kind of access way back in the day, and I think we should be really fortunate about this opportunity that we do have.
Absolutely.
Well, we touched on this a little bit about squash matches and such, and a lot of what TNA is doing with Impact has some squash matches and such, and it really does seem to make their pay-per-views special. What is your opinion on TNA?
I think the women are beautiful. Oh, TNA. I didn't know you were talking about. Okay. I think they're a very good promotion. They're an excellent indie promotion. They have a lot of good mixed talent from a lot of the indies, like Ring of Honor people and etc. Chris Candido has come in there recently, as you know.
Yes.
So they're using guys that you don't see in WWE, of course.
Yeah.
You all know the reasons for that. People always ask me, are they competition to WWE, or can they ever be? And here, I'll give you the answer. The answer is, if they're on Monday night at 9 o'clock on a good cable TV station, then they will become competition to WWE. Until they are in a prime time spot on a prime network, they can't become competition.
They're just an alternative right now.
To me, it's amazing people can't figure this out. Do you think so-and-so Ring of Honor can become competition to the WWE? Of course they can, if they have the same TV power. It's all based on exposure and TV power.
Yeah.
It's a simple formula.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we always talk about. We always get into that debate with Ring of Honor fans, and I have nothing against Ring of Honor. I know Gabe Sapolsky is a really good guy. All I'm saying is that the Internet fans, for whatever reason, have this very elitist attitude about Ring of Honor, and they don't seem to think WWE can ever compare to them, and I just don't quite get it.
It's their own style. WWE has matches as good as Ring of Honor sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Ring of Honor has matches as good as or as poor as WWE sometimes. It all, it depends. WWE's got a variety of everything, trying to fit everything into the 2 hours. A little bit for everything. Ring of Honor bases their entire promotion on the classic wrestling style, and if that's what you love, and I do, but I can watch anything. I enjoy it all.
Bill, we touched on the upcycles a little while ago, and I have a question for you. And obviously, not many people, I think, will ever be able to answer this question until the next upcycle, or else they'd be very rich. But in the 80s, we had the concepts of rock and wrestling and making WWE family-oriented. In the 90s, the concepts that sprung it up were the invasion angle, the NWO, obviously, and the heel promoter concept, and also attitude. Do you have any idea or any inkling of what the next big concept that will spark wrestling to popularity is?
No, I wish I did. My idea was, and especially right now, because he's still a mystery, is the guy that I'd love to see them get, but does he's too much trouble, is Tyson.
Huh.
Just bring Mike Tyson in, build him up, have him become champion, and then because he's got that attitude that will draw people to watch.
Mm-hmm. Well, he's a star still. I mean, that's the thing.
Still a star, and there's a curiosity. There's still a curiosity about Tyson, as far as I'm concerned.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's a natural for the WWE.
Yeah.
It'd be a big paycheck, though.
Really do. But what is the? Let's examine this now. What is it? It was rock and wrestling. Right, rapid wrestling won't work.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, John Cena went as far as he can with that due to the success of Eminem's career and his movie. What's out there right now? Country and wrestling's not going to work.
Right.
Does it have to be music, though?
Well, that's what I'm saying. What else is out there? What's the big thing right now? Reality shows.
Right.
Okay? And WWE addressed that with Tough Enough.
Yeah. Right.
So,
and
the concept just hasn't come up yet.
What else is out there? Actually, they're doing, and I didn't like this for political reasons, but they're not doing a bad, slow job of building up the Muhammad Hussein situation.
Mm. He's a real good talker.
But he's a very good talker, and people are now starting to really, more than be offended, they're just starting to hate the character.
Yeah.
They're starting to hate the whole thing.
Yeah.
Mm. Do you think it's just too close to 9/11, or what?
I don't know. I see people actually starting to react to it now.
Do you mean hate it as in they really just don't like it, or hate it as in, he's a bad guy, boo?
Hate it as he's a bad guy who doesn't like our country.
Right.
That type of thing. I don't think they're looking at him as, hey, this is a guy who helped cause 9/11.
Right.
They're looking at him now as that he's a Middle Easterner. He's got that gimmick on, and right away, it's the enemy.
Right.
What do you think of Randy Orton?
He's tremendous, but where else can you go with him? They've gone everywhere with him. Where can you go with him now?
Yeah.
He's been face, he's been heel.
You know what's missing, too? Great, steady tag teams.
Oh,
yes,
absolutely.
Yes, definitely.
Great, steady tag teams, even more so than the cruiserweight division. When I was growing up, there were tag teams.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, great tag teams throughout the Carolinas, throughout New York, everywhere.
Right.
But, now, La Resistance, they've got nobody to work those guys
And
with.
they got squashed by Batista on Monday night in a 1 versus 2 match when they were in the ring at the same time.
Exactly.
Yeah, that doesn't help anybody right there.
Yeah.
Yes, the business is cyclical, as you were saying, but I don't know when that cycle is going to come back, because there's got to be something in the world for wrestling to grab onto.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is right.
Tag team wrestling is actually a great topic to talk about. I was watching Rockers versus Akeem Akeem and Big Boss Man.
Twin Towers, yeah.
Yes, the other day, and I was just, obviously I noticed this, but it never really came to the forefront of my mind. I know it's just the difference in psychology of the tag matches back then as opposed to now. Back then there were constant tags. It was much more psychology based, as opposed to now it's essentially singles matches and with an occasional tag. And then I don't think I've ever seen a tag finish in the last 10 years.
Well, let me ask you this, Eric, and Mr. Apter. When was the last time you heard an announcer talk about cutting off the ring?
Oh, I haven't. And please call me Bill, not Mr. X.
Okay, Bill.
I haven't, but you see, like you were saying, you were watching it and checking out the psychology of it. I never, as a fan, and I try to always divorce myself as a worker in the business somehow, and a fan as not even looking at psychology. I didn't have to question psychology. It was very clear cut when I was through my career that these were the good guys, these were the bad guys. And what's the psychology? The bad guys wanted to get the fans to hate them. The good guys wanted the fans to love them.
Well, I more or less meant that the matches made sense. Like they were keeping the fresh man, like that. They were cutting the ring in half. I mean, now it's just like I've never really seen a match like in the last 7 to 8 years that the tag team match doesn't end in like everybody being in the ring at once and then some crazy finish happen. There's never just a clean tag win, and I used
to enjoy that about tag team wrestling because it was something special. Oh my God, 4 guys in the ring, etc., and then tags and no tags and all that. The unpredictability of what could happen in tag teams was terrific, but you just don't see it anymore.
Yeah.
There's no steady. You want to see steady tag team combinations.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I think obviously the tag team era that's always talked about is the late '80s, early '90s. But I think in second place as far as recent history, I think the WWE did a pretty good job in the late '90s, early 2000s with their tag team division. I think the only problem was they shifted the belts too quickly, and from WrestleMania 2000 to WrestleMania 17, Edge and Christian were 7-time champions, and I think that really cut off the longevity of that tag team. I mean,
Yeah.
do you remember that, like all the switching around the belts? Do you have any thoughts on those?
Of course. Yeah. Sometimes it gets too confusing. You don't know who's champion.
Yeah.
And then
It means less when somebody's not holding it for a long period of time.
Yeah.
well, look at the Dudley Boys. They're like, what, 57-time champions or something like that? It's just...
Like, remember that if you're 57-time champion, you had to lose
You've
it
lost it.
6 times, right?
Yeah.
Right. Well,
And I think the Dudley Boys are a pretty consistent tag team because they've been together like since '96. But
Yeah.
I mean, geez, this is the frequency of title changes is ridiculous.
No, it definitely was ridiculous. Still is. Week to week, you're not sure who the champions are.
let me ask you this, and we're going to let you go pretty quickly because I know we've spent a lot of time with you, but it's been a pleasure.
Was it something I said?
No. Well,
No,
I just don't want to cut you.
go ahead.
Are you okay with time then?
I'm fine. One or two more questions. It's real good.
Okay, cool. You were on the Hulk Hogan biography on A&E. What is your relationship with Hulk Hogan?
I've always had a great business and personal relationship with him.
Hmm.
All the stones that were tossed at him by other guys and all that back in the 80s were probably very well deserved by him because he was protecting his character and he was watching out for himself. He wanted to make sure that no kryptonite ever got to Superman.
Good way of putting it, actually.
Bill, do you mind if we do some quick word associations before we close
Not at
out?
all. With each other or with me?
With you.
With you.
Okay, I thought you meant between the two of you, and I was.
You can give
No. We leave that stuff for the other shows to do.
Oh, all right.
Okay.
You can give a one-word answer, or if you have a story, that's fine too. The first one we have for you is Ric Flair.
Ooh, Ric Flair. Story is good friend, great guy, and he hated
Why do you say that?
because every time I'd ask him to pose for a photo 9 out of 10 times when he was in the hallway, he'd say, "I'll be right back," and he'd never come back. He was more comfortable having his photo taken in the ring than standing by a backdrop and having his photo taken.
How about one that I hope you do an impression of because you've done a few? Dusty Rhodes.
Listen, let me tell you something. I'm going to tell you right now about Bil Apter, baby. The American dream, if you will. If you will. Dusty Rhodes was and still is Mr. Self-Promotion.
I don't know. DDP might have a challenge on him on that one.
How's that? With who?
No, Diamond Dallas Page is a pretty good self-promoter, too. I love Diamond Dallas.
But he is, but he's not Dusty Rhodes. Dusty Rhodes, during Dusty's time, was the greatest promotional machine for himself in the whole world.
How about a guy
I want to put an ugly rumor that's always been around that people say, well, Dusty Rhodes either paid to be on so many magazine covers or he, because he worked for Jim Crockett Promotions in the office, threatened to pull your press pass away if you didn't give him awards. Well, that's bull, because Dusty Rhodes, during that period of the 80s when he was on all the covers, deserved every cover he got. Our bottom line was to sell magazines, and we put him on a cover, and we sold magazines.
He's on. I have the 1979 PWI issue in my hands right now, and he's on the cover with Mil Mascaris.
Oh, yeah, well, that's sure. I took that picture at the Westchester County Center in White Plains, New York, and it was almost impossible because neither of them wanted to pose with the other one. Took me over an hour and a half to finally get them to cross paths on the stage that led to the ring, and I just grabbed it, please, boom, 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 and I took it.
How about a guy who looked up to Ric Flair as a kid, Shawn Michaels?
Oh, what a tremendous guy! What a tremendous wrestler. Nothing negative to say about him either.
How about somebody that I actually have a tape, 1985, Great American Bash. It was, I think Pro Wrestling Illustrated was on the header of it as well.
Yeah,
You and Gordon Solie.
Super Bout.
What'd you say?
Superstars and Superbouts.
Pretty much. Yeah, I'm trying to remember what it was called. Yes, I think that might be it. Anyway, you were in the control panel, is what I'd like to call it, with Gordon Solie.
Yes.
What is your memories of Gordon Solie?
Oh, Gordon Solie was a fabulous guy. He was my broadcasting mentor in a lot of ways. When I first heard Gordon Solie, when the shows from Florida were on UHF TV in New York, I didn't like him. I thought he was too dry and very boring. And Gordon Solie was like a fine wine. You acquire a taste for Gordon Solie. And I had more fun with him in my career than almost anyone else, just being around him and learning how to do what he did so well.
How about the now 10-time World Heavyweight Champion, Triple H?
Triple H is a Class A individual, old school, who should have been around 30 years ago.
Huh. How about Bret the Hitman Hart?
The classic wrestler. I mean, the type of pro wrestler, both in the ring and outside of the ring, a gentleman that every wrestler should aspire to be like.
I got one for you. How about a guy that some people say, I know he prevented them from being a part of the Beyond the Mat movie. I don't know if he prevented you guys from doing anything with him. How about Eric Bischoff?
I've had an up and down relationship with Eric Bischoff. There were nights that I was backstage at WCW that he was to the point of nasty. And then there were other nights that he was very nice. But he always made it a point, no matter what kind of mood he was in, at the end of the show, to come over to me and any other press people there that he knew to ask what we thought of the show, and always appreciated the input.
I've just got two more here. How about Chris Jericho?
Fun guy. Always enjoyed being with him. Good joker, fun guy.
And Stu Sax.
But he's got the heart, and he's got a heart of a lion. He's Lionheart. Anyway, go on.
He's actually a former guest. If I could just plug everybody to check out the website. He's in the archives and he's up there, so check it out and download the show.
How about Stu Sax?
Stu and I had known each other forever. Stu came in, oh God, probably 20 years ago or so. Had a great working relationship with him. Had a great personal relationship with him, and I don't really speak to many of the people over at the at PWI anymore.
How about the last?
Bitter, nothing unfriendly, nothing bitter. It's just I've moved on to other things. In terms of the internet, I'm also beside OneWrestling.com and doing the Wrestle Reunion. I'm also the general manager of Bang Dory Funk's Federation. I'm a backstage broadcaster at the Cyberspace Wrestling Federation. I'm the director of international affairs for Hawaii Championship Wrestling. I'm the commissioner of 3PW. So I'm doing a lot of independent work right now.
Absolutely. Well, we have the utmost respect for what you do. How about just one last name for you, and then we can let you...
I thought Stu Sax was the last name.
That was the last name for Eric. That's not...
Oh, I didn't...
All right, one more. No, I'm just being a goofball here. Well, last name on the list is Vince McMahon.
He is... How can I say this? He's the ultimate entrepreneur and promoter. I think any business that he would have aspired to have been in, he would have tried to make it as interesting and profitable as he could.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Well, we really can't thank you enough for your time. This coming weekend is Wrestle Reunion. Would you like to promote that one more time?
I certainly would. It's January 28th, 29th, and 30th at the Doubletree Hotel in Tampa, Florida. It's going to be beautiful weather inside and outside, over 80 superstars. And I'm going to be there hosting the event with my buddy DDP. And I'd love to see some of the listeners from your show come over to me and say that they heard me tonight.
I'd love to.
And I can't wait. I'm psyched.
Yeah, it sounds cool.
It's Wrestle Reunion. You got to be there.
Wish I could be. We're in Arizona, so actually we can't travel across the country, but we really wish we could be there.
If you get in the car right now,
we might be there in time, right?
You might make it by Friday night.
I'd love to. really can't thank you enough for your time, and I guess...
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me on. You know how I end everything, correct?
How's that?
I'll see you at the matches.